بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today I'd like to share with you some reading from a very dear book to me. This book is صفحات من صبر العلماء على شدائد العلم والتحصيل. It's for those who read Arabic. It's this book by probably upside down, but anyway, it's by our late Sheikh rahimahullah, Sheikh al-Fattah Abu Ghudda. He wrote a book. It took him more than 20-30 years to write it. So the intention was not to read to write a book. Through his 50 plus years, probably more, even 60. This time of seeking knowledge. So since he was very young till he passed away, rahimahullah, he was a knowledge seeker, never stopped seeking knowledge. So every time he comes across something useful, beneficial, he write it down in a piece of paper. So he made many of these pieces throughout his life. So he decided once, when these pieces were many, to collect them together and put them in a book. And this is what happened. So he filterized them, he went through them, he organized them, and then he put them through the sequence of the time sequence. So the 1st century, 2nd century, and so on. And then he called the book pages, literally, I'm translating literal translation, pages from the patience or sabr of the scholars in the journey to seek knowledge. So the difficulties and resilience which they have in order to seek knowledge. And his book, mashallah, is around 400 pages. The whole book is about short stories from different biographies of the giants of this ummah. So he talks about varieties of sciences, not just fiqh or hadith, or he talks about all sorts of Islamic sciences, whether it's linguistics, fiqh or hadith or Quran, you name it. So he collected all these stories, beautiful stories, and he talks about the short biography, because each one of them probably needs a 400 pages biography. And in that book, it's very useful to read, especially it's an entertaining book to read the biography of the scholars. This is the biggest library we have in our Islamic library, is the biography of the scholars. It's very rich. So we have millions and millions of books on biographies of scholars. And this started very early to go in line with the authentication of the hadith and the authentication of the narrators. So they need to know who the narrator is, and his authenticity, his teachers, his students, his work, and so on and so forth. So from very early, the scholars were focused on writing biographies of the narrators and knowledge seekers and so on. So to cut a long story short, Sheikh narrated many stories, and many of it, when you read, you cannot hold your tears actually. Abu Hassan Nadwi rahimahullah and many giant scholars, they made introductions for this book. And they've mentioned that we read the book of the Sheikh al-Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimahullah, and we cannot hold our tears in some of these stories. It shows you the dedication. I cannot read the whole book with you, I wish. But it's in Arabic. I'm not sure yet if anyone has translated it to English. It will be huge work and good work. Probably some of you will have the motivation to do this. So the Sheikh rahimahullah, he collected all these short stories, and his intention was many things, but mainly to motivate everyone to seek knowledge. That this journey of knowledge wasn't a smooth ride. It wasn't an easy journey. And those who reached the top in their science, in their knowledge, it wasn't without effort. And he brought these stories to our attention to show us. And he called it sabr, the book. The book is صفحات من صبر العلماء. He could have mentioned the pages from the journey of the scholars, the pages from the funny bit of their life, or the books which they have left behind. He could have chosen anything but patience. He has chosen patience, sabr. And this is why I wanted to share with you, because Ramadan is the month of sabr, more than any other month, because we control our desires, we control our emotions, we control our faculties. So it is a huge reminder, Ramadan, about how can we be the best of ourselves, be the best version of what we are actually. And we don't know exactly the quality of ourselves unless Ramadan comes, and then we can see that we have good qualities, and we have some shaky qualities, some wobbly qualities, some weak qualities, but this is part and parcel of being a human. So I was thinking, how can we share with you these stories if we are not going to read it, all of it? So, as usual, I read this book a long time ago. The first publication was in 1971. So at that time, I definitely have not read it. Yes, because I was probably 4 years old or something. I've read the publication of 92 and 94. Yeah, rahimahullah. And he started his book. The Sheikh is a master in choosing the sweetest and the best of what he reads, and the most motivational quotes. And this is, I've learned this from him, rahimahullah, and I've learned a lot from him, especially in the line of my work. Even he inspired me to work in the editing of manuscripts, which was very tough. I never thought this will be my profession. In a million years, this wasn't on my list. But because what I've read from his work, rahimahullah. And by the way, my study under the Sheikh wasn't direct. It was through his books. So I never met the Sheikh face to face. We have exchanged some letters all days. As well, over the phone, we have a few phone calls with him, rahimahullah. But my learning from the Sheikh was through his books, rahimahullah ta'ala. So I have admired the work of the Sheikh, and he is still till now very unique, even after he passed away, rahimahullah. In his work, the way he approached it, the way it's a long story. I don't want to take you through this now, but anyway. So I was inspired to start a profession in Beirut. This was in 1991. Mainly focused on تحقيق الكتب المخطوطات, and this is what we call in Arabic. It's the verification and editing and publishing the Islamic manuscripts. So the Sheikh started his book here, rahimahullah, by saying a statement of Imam Ahmad. He said, قال الإمام أحمد رضي الله تعالى عنه سمعت أن قل رجل يأخذ كتابا ينظر فيه إلا استفاد منه شيئا. I've heard that it's never been the case that someone let me do the translation. I've heard that you never read a book with the intention to benefit from it, but you will get the benefit. So this is what Imam Ahmad was saying, rahimahullah. And then the second quote he started his book with, which is very straightforward to the core of the book. And this is, by the way, the first quote he put on his book, rahimahullah, on the first page. Just to show you the humility and the tawada which he used to have, rahimahullah. And I don't think my book is a great book, even if it's a very humble book. Have the intention to benefit from it. As Imam Ahmad stated, you will get the benefit. The second quote he started with, it's a quote from Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari, rahimahullah, who is a very famous scholar in the Maliki school and then the spiritual school as well, in the Sufi realm as well. He said, rahimahullah, من لم تكن له بداية محرقة لم تكن له نهاية مشرقة. Who never had a burning start, he won't have a shiny end. Literally, I'm just doing the literal translation. And this is very relevant to the book. So if you have a very burning start, it has many bumpy rides, it has many difficulties, it has many challenges and obstacles and suffering and sweat and blood and tears. Yes, if you've done it with the right intention, in accordance with the Sharia, then it's definitely will take you to a shiny end, without doubt. And I came across this many times from many of our shuyukh, many. They will repeatedly mention this. And one of these quotes, which still fresh in my mind every time I call or recall these stories. Statement one of the shuyukh, rahimahullah, said, the knowledge seeker, no matter how many difficulties he faced in his life, paraphrasing of course, he will never die but as a king. Wow. I heard this when I was very young, and it's still echoing in my mind. And I came across this many times as well. I've seen the fruits of this in many of the sincere knowledge seekers. So the Sheikh is starting his book with this, rahimahullah. And the third one, which I will share with you as well, that's and on the third page, yes, he quoted Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, a very special scholar, and as well, my advice, you read his biography. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak it's a reflection of his name. So Ibn al-Mubarak, the son of the Mubarak. So he is very Mubarak scholar, rahimahullah. Read his biography. He has sweet, beautiful quotations and statements and deep knowledge. He has a book called Az-Zuhd as well, if you are interested. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, rahimahullah, he said, إن وجدت على الحائط موعظة فانظر فيها تتعظ. If you did find on a wall a piece of advice, read it and you will benefit from it. And they asked him, so what about fiqh? Can we open the book and read fiqh? He said, no. Fiqh, you cannot get but through listening to the scholars. You sit down with the right scholars, you listen to them to get the knowledge of fiqh. Fiqh is not about you open the book and read. You can't do that. So you need a sheikh to teach you fiqh. So this is how he started his book, rahimahullah, and it's a beautiful journey if we want to start the whole book. So I usually definitely read the introduction and the details, and then I go to the second thing, I go to the index and check what are the topics. Yes. So in our scenario, I tried my best to summarize for you something we can benefit from. So I went to the conclusion of the book. And not as any other book. Usually some books, they will conclude in 2 pages and so on. The Sheikh made a conclusion in more than probably 30 pages, which is, again, hard work to do. So when you read the book, I'll share with you some of the conclusions which he finished his book with, inshallah. But to summarize in general, what the Sheikh was mentioning in his book, rahimahullah ta'ala. So he divided his book into 8 sections. And each section he has chosen a topic, and he put the stories and the biographies of this topic under that section, and so on. So in around 8 sections, rahimahullah, he divided these biographies. So the first section he talked about here, their stories about their tiredness and their journey and the distances which they used to travel to seek knowledge. This is the first part. And you read something, if it wasn't authentic, you will say this is a fairy tale. No, it can't happen. This is not real. No one will travel miles and miles and days and months just to seek one narration, one hadith, one important thing. You will say that this is madness. No, it's not. It's real. And you will see when you read these stories, you will be shocked. And this is very inspiring as well. You read and you say, wow, is that possible? Yes, it is. The second part, he collected stories as well on sleepless nights and refraining from luxury of the dunya and entertainment in the dunya, in order to seek knowledge and get into higher ranks and higher understanding. And as well, when you read these stories, it's like fairy tales. In the third section, rahimahullah, he talks about their patience on poverty. Many scholars, not all of them, many, were very poor. Probably many of them used to be rich, but because they have spent their money in seeking knowledge, buying books, buying manuscripts, this, that, and the other, journeying and going from place to place, staying next to the shuyukh and doing nothing but just writing down the knowledge and listening and writing down again and verifying and teaching. And he will show you in these stories what they used to eat, what do they used to wear, and their furniture, their humble life, humble apartments or houses or homes or rooms. And he talks about the great scholars like Abu Hanifa, Malik, Ahmad. He talks about the very famous and the very unknown to many of us as well. And he talked a lot about hunger, that they suffer hunger because they have no money and they are seeking knowledge and they have the dignity not to ask. So they will stay days and nights without food, but very little sometimes. And if somebody invited them or somebody knew it or knew about it, they will support them or something like that. And number 4, he talks about their journey or their stories about thirst in the deserts, in the long distances which they used to travel. So they have run out of water, they have run out of food, and as well, long hours and long days. And he collected many of these stories. Number 5, he talks about their stories about penniless. They have no money anymore. And they were in a different country as foreigners, as travelers. And what do they used to do? Number 6, he talks about painful stories when they have no choice but to sell some of their books in order to survive. And you read and you can't but to cry to see how they consider their books like one of their children. They cannot sell it. They prefer to stay hungry than selling a book and using the money to eat. And he collected many of these stories. And number 7, he talks about some scholars, they choose not to marry because of dedication of time for knowledge and nothing else. Of course, the Sheikh later made this section as a separate book. He called it Al-Ulama Al-Uzzab, the single scholars. And he says, of course, this is not the Sunnah, but this is a choice. And people, some of them, like Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, was a single scholar. He wasn't married. He said, I can't give my family what, or their rights. I cannot give them their rights. So he decided not to marry. And he passed away very young, rahimahullah, as well. Al-Ulama al-Uzzab, the single scholars, the name of the book. And plenty of details on that as well. Number 8, which is the last section in his book, rahimahullah, he talks about how much did they pay and sacrifice to seek knowledge. So they will sell everything valuable to go and seek knowledge. So the knowledge was very sacred, very important to them. So they spent everything to get the knowledge. They spared nothing to get the knowledge. And throughout the whole book, you see that the journey was a crucial part of seeking knowledge. Very essential for any knowledge seeker. And you can go and read any biography since the first century till probably the 10th century, even till today. Still, that of course not the same, but still, the journey is very essential part of seeking knowledge. So this is in general what the whole book is about, these 8 sections, rahimahullah. But I wanted to share with you the first journey which been made by what's his name, rahimahullah, the companion Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. So the Sheikh mentioned, rahimahullah, the story of Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. Yeah, al-Ulama al-Uzzab, yes, that's the book, yeah. He takes us through as well very entertaining remark which he came across, that you find many of the great scholars, they came from a background of professions. For instance, he will quote for you like hirfa, which we call in Arabic. Hirfa, it means manual work. Haddad, like the one who deals with like blacksmiths. Yes, this is Haddad, we call him. Or somebody like sabr. Sabr, it means he dye the fabric. So the person who does dyeing the fabric, we call him sabr. So you find great scholars from these families, sabr and Haddad and Khabbaz, baker. He is among the great scholars. We have Imam al-Khabbaz, for instance. Yeah, he was a baker. At the same time, he was a scholar. You have Laham, the butcher. He was a butcher, and at the same time he was, as well as Sammak, the one who sells fish. Yes, and many other things related to a profession. So many of them came from very humble background. So they used to work to earn their living and seek knowledge at the same time. So the Sheikh is drawing our attention to these small details, but very huge in its effect on our minds, on our hearts, on our understanding. So the Prophet ﷺ received a delegation, as Bukhari narrated, he received a delegation from youngsters. And this is what I wanted to share with you. So he received a delegation from youngsters. It didn't say how many, but it says a delegation of youngsters. They came to the Prophet ﷺ to seek knowledge, to learn from him, alayhi salatu wassalam. And here you go. Imam al-Bukhari narrated in his Sahih, rahimahullah ta'ala, and Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. This companion, his name is Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. Malik ibn al-Huwayrith, he says, أتينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن شبابة متقاربون. We came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم and we were youngsters, almost the same age. Yes. فأقمنا عنده 20 ليلة. We stayed with him 20 nights. You see, they came from a long distance. This journey, the sole purpose of this journey is to learn from the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, to have the honor of being in his presence, to see him, to hear him, to learn from him, to be under his wing, alayhi salatu wassalam, to get his barakah, to get his dua, to hear his recitation. It's all of this. So he said youngsters, which is very strange. Usually youngsters are very rebel and they don't come easily to get the wisdom. But they came together and they said, okay, guys, let's go and learn from the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they traveled. They came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And because they cannot learn overnight, they stayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. More likely it was in the mosque or something else. So they will stay there. And the companions will host them and look after them because they are their guests. So the word in the hadith here, it says shababa. Shababa, which is plural of shab, which in English you say chap. Yes? Shab, shab. So shab, it means young, young. So the plural of young, you can say shabab or shababa. Both are correct from Arabic and linguistic point of view. So they came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam to learn. Yes, they stayed 20 nights. And then listen what happened. After 20 nights, فظن, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he thought that we do miss our families. فظن أن اشتقنا أهلنا. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at his mercy and his compassion. So 20 days and they are young and and he said to them, وسألنا عمن تركنا في أهلنا فأخبرناه. So he asked them, عليه الصلاة والسلام, whom you left behind. So we, one by one, he asked them whom you left behind, and he said, I left behind, for instance, my parents, my siblings, and so on and so forth. So everyone has a different answer, sort of. So he asked them one by one, and this is showing us the details in his character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he used to ask about his companions, about what is relevant, what is important, and so on. So he asked them whom you left behind. وَكَانَ رَقِيقًا رَحِيمًا. So Malik ibn al-Huwayrith, he's describing the Prophet ﷺ. He said he was raqiq. very soft. Rahim, very merciful, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Look, he just stayed with him a few days and he can feel this. Yes. وكان رقيقا رحيما صلى الله عليه وسلم. فقال ارجعوا إلى أهلكم. Go back to your families. فعلموهم and teach them what you have learned from me. فعلموهم ومروهم and command them to follow these instructions and these guidance which I have given to you. وصلوا كما رأيتموني أصلي and pray the way you have seen me praying. And I'm pretty sure you are very familiar with this narration. So the one who narrated this in particular, Malik ibn al-Huwayrith. Of course, there are other companions who narrated this, but in this incident, we see Malik ibn al-Huwayrith, who was a young companion. Prophet ﷺ said, go back to your families, because he thought that we missed our families and we have this longing to them. Although they didn't say that, but he felt it, alayhi salatu wassalam, out of his compassion, alayhi salatu wassalam. And he said, go and teach them and spread this knowledge and command them to pray and follow my guidance and pray the way you have seen me praying. Because salah is very prescriptive. As we've seen the Prophet ﷺ praying, we have to pray. وَإِذَا حَضَرَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَلْيُؤَذِّنْ لَكُمْ أَحَدُكُمْ. When the time for prayer starts, so some of you should do the adhan. وَلْيَؤُمَّكُمْ أَكْبَرُكُمْ. So the eldest among you, he should lead the jama'ah. From this hadith, Bukhari narrated it in his book in 9 occasions. And we know Bukhari's style. He will take the hadith and divide it into different categories. Depends on what's in the hadith. If it's just one topic, he will put it in one place. If it has 8 topics, he will put it in 8 places. And this is what we call al-mukarrarat in Bukhari, the repeated narrations in Bukhari, not for the sake of repetition, no, but for the sake of relevancy to that topic. So he probably he mentioned here once he put it under the adhan when you are traveling, and he put it under as well 2 and above are jama'ah. He put it as well under the mercy for people and animals. And he put it in different places as well about the imamah, who's entitled to the imamah, and conditions for imamah. So we see this from Bukhari rahimahullah. So the beauty of this hadith, it talks about many things, but the main thing, the intention. These youngsters who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their intention was to learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to get his barakah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to carry this knowledge and disseminate this knowledge to the people, and to be the pioneers in the delivery of the knowledge. But in order to do that, you need to be the pioneer in receiving the knowledge. This is the biggest hurdle for many of us. So in order to get there, we need sabr. We need sabr and sincerity. These are 2 main qualities which every knowledge seeker shouldn't miss. We need sincerity and we need sabr. And Ramadan is the right place to teach us how to get more sincerity and how to get more sabr. So the Prophet ﷺ taught the young companions, and you see his sabr as well for the youngsters. You see, you need more sabr when you are dealing with youngsters than, and you know what I'm saying now, especially in the lockdown scenario, you need more sabr with the youngsters than the adults. So we see here that the first journey, probably among the first journeys in Islam, that they used to come to the Prophet and learn from him, alayhi salatu wassalam. So what do we conclude from this hadith and this session? The conclusion, to me, to be honest, is about improving our quality of sincerity, improving the quality of sabr, and we have to have a target to achieve in Ramadan. Don't make it very big, otherwise you cannot carry it. So make it something you can carry, something you can achieve. And on a practical term or level, let's say, this Ramadan, let us work on the quality of sabr more. So no matter how patient you are, we can always improve our sabr. And let's see the gaps in our character and work on it. So let's pick 2 or 3 traits which we hate from ourselves, and we know, everyone knows these traits. Your mother keep telling you this, your father keep telling you that, or your friend keeps your friends keep telling you this about this trait which they hate and you hate. So let's put this on the list, not too many, few, and try our best to work on them, to make ourselves better, to sharpen our qualities and make it better, inshallah ta'ala. And one of it is the quality of sabr. And one of it, this is the relevant thing to what we mentioned today. One of it is the sincerity, how sincere I am. Can we test our sincerity? Yes, a very easy test. If you are sincere, then you don't care about people's criticism. It won't affect your sincerity because you've done it not for them, you've done it for Allah's sake. Okay, the opposite as well. You don't care about their praise because you've done it for Allah's sake. You have never done this for their sake. This is where you see the sincerity in you. So it won't change your position towards something you are doing for Allah's sake. Neither the praise of people or the criticism of people. Why? Because I've done it for Allah's sake. I know it's not an easy task to do. It's easy to say, but difficult to apply. Yes. So whatever we do, let's try this Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. I've been thinking about this for a long time. So let's try this Ramadan to improve our qualities. So let's make this a task. We are still in the first week of Ramadan, alhamdulillah. So let's work on the quality which needs improvement. Start with one and work on it. So for instance, you are a very temperamental person. You lose your sabr quickly. Okay, put it on the list and say, I need to control myself more. I need to control my tongue more. I need to control my, anger more, and so on. So put this on the list and start and ask Allah Azza wa Jal in these blessed days and time, Ya Rabbi, help me to achieve this, to be better. Help me to improve my qualities, to improve my character, to be a better character in line with the prophetic character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we were to do this, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we can achieve it, but we need to know where to start. And as usual, I'm trying my best not to carry a big stone, then you cannot move. Let's try to carry small pebbles, then we can move with it. And then we can make it later much bigger and so on. And this is how we improve ourselves, inshallah ta'ala. So let's start with small things which we can easily change, and then go to the bigger things which will take some time. And this is the right time. Ramadan is the right time, inshallah, to address this. And you will find plenty of support from Allah Azza wa Jal, especially when the shayateen are chained in Ramadan. So we have more opportunity to achieve better result in Ramadan, inshallah.